All right, so in today's video, I want to talk about team building when it comes to building a community business. Now, this is going to look different in different organizations, and it's going to look different depending on what type of community you're building. But for me, when it's come to the Flying Sage and building a wellness-focused, psychedelic-focused community and breathwork-focused community, there's been some really key, important decisions I feel like I've made along the journey around team building that's allowed me to now get to a point where I don't necessarily have to be managing every single event or even showing up to many events. So right now, even though the Flying Sage offers, let's say, 4 to 5 in-person events per week, I'm only facilitating events that I choose to facilitate. So at the moment, that looks like 1 event basically per month. But all the other events that we run are facilitated and managed and run by other people on the team. And I think, although even a business like mine, like the Flying Sage, I find is very rewarding and impactful, I still wouldn't want to be caught in the weeds of the business on a day-to-day basis, right? Like I want to reach a point in my business where I'm able to show up for what I want to show up for, and some of the work that maybe I don't want to focus on as much, it will be covered by other people on the team. So this video is going to be just a brief introduction to what I would suggest as some first steps if you're at the beginning of your community building journey. And so the first is like hiring a VA. So this should be your first hire. And essentially a VA here refers to someone who's like a virtual assistant. This doesn't have to be someone overseas, but I typically recommend that because you can hire people for a lot cheaper overseas. And it's important to note that even like what might be a very, very low salary for someone here in, let's say, Vancouver or North America, that same salary offered to someone in other places of the world is actually quite good. And so you can actually be supporting someone else with improving their life and their living conditions by offering a really cool remote opportunity. So I just want to mention that because some people, when they think about hiring overseas, they see it as like taking advantage of people, but I definitely don't see it like that. So I actually have a whole VA guide, which maybe I'll link in this video, which you can follow along if you'd like to hire your own VA. It's the exact steps that I took to hire one. But this was a really big game changer for me because it essentially allowed me to delegate some of the operational tasks that were taking up a lot of time. So anything that's kind of like repetitive and that you do on a consistent basis, you want to basically create an SOP for that. And this is a really important note. Like as you're building your community or any business for that matter, you shouldn't wait until you need to create an SOP. You should create your SOPs right away. So like as you're building your business, like I love Notion, and I have a brand called Notion Panda you can check out, which has a bunch of Notion templates you can use. But essentially, Notion is one example of a place where you can store SOPs, but you can even do it in like Google Docs if you don't want to use that, or you can use other systems too. But essentially, you need to create standards of procedure, right? Or systems of procedure. I'm pretty sure SOP stands for standards of procedure. But anyways, the point is you want to create lists, you want to create steps, you want to document the process that you take to achieve and specifically to deliver on events. That's really what you're focusing on first. I wouldn't focus on marketing. I wouldn't focus on sales. Like right now in my journey, I'm kind of just starting to focus on that side of things. But when you're starting out, the focus should be on delivery. And what I mean by that is like, what are the things that need to happen to deliver on the product? And in this case, if you're building a community and your focus is on events, then the events is your product. So what do you need to deliver on the event? Well, you need to find facilitators. You need to get the facilitators to the venues. You need to make sure the venues are equipped with all the right equipment. Then you need to have the facilitators say the right things, and you need to have people host them. And there's all these different things that you need for events. And events, out of all products that you need to deliver, I'd say are actually pretty intensive. Like they do require a lot of things to be able to deliver on them well, especially if you do want to run and offer transformational events that are a high caliber, right? If you want to just bring people together for a free event where you're just hanging out at a pub or something, there's nothing against that. That's great, but you don't really need too much to deliver on that. You basically just need a time and a place. But as you grow your events business and as you start to offer business events that are, I'd say, higher caliber and have more details to them and just more to offer, then you do need, I'd say, quite a bit of stuff to deliver on them. And then there's also the piece around publishing, right? Like you need to get the word out there about your events. And so I'd say marketing and delivery kind of can go hand in hand sometimes. And essentially when you're looking for a VA, you're wanting to find someone who can help you basically work on all of these repetitive tasks that come along with those things. So that's your first, I'd say, primary goal, is to find someone that can help you on some of those sort of tasks. Then from there, and kind of simultaneously, you're wanting to build your team of facilitators. So if you think about, the events that you're offering, there's probably a few different types, and you don't want to be dependent on one person, right? When you're building a community, and not even just from the point of view of being dependent, but also for the sake of variety and diversity, you want to have multiple people on your team. And even if you're not necessarily hiring someone as a staff or a contractor, you can still think about facilitators as being an important aspect of your team, right? These are really important individuals that are contributing to your mission, because they're the ones that are providing the actual service. And so you want to be focusing on, partnering, I'd say, with facilitators that are in the same niche as you, that have the same values as you, that also can provide really exceptional events. And so you want to be very careful with who you're working with here, because facilitators, I think, make a really big impact on the experience that people have. And at the same time, you don't necessarily want to just, like, if you're starting as a facilitator, you don't want to limit what your other team members are offering based on what you offer. In other words, you don't want to tell these facilitators to do a certain way. You want them to have some flexibility to bring in their unique gifts as well. And I think that's an important balance that you have to strike when building a community. So be careful with that. And so once you're focused on once you've got your VA, and then once you've got some facilitators around you, I think this is a really good place to start. So if you're not there yet, I would say focus on getting there. And then after that, you can start building your team out a little bit more. And so what I've done with Flying Sage, I found helpful, was to start focusing on some of the people that are like really, I think one term for them is like super users. This is a term that you find more in the tech industry, but what are the people that are really like super passionate about what you're doing and maybe contributing more than others, right? Like I know for me, when I was building Flying Sage, there was a couple people initially that were just like contributing a lot more. They were a lot more passionate. They really wanted to see this thing grow almost as much as I did, right? If not more. So it's like, that is a very precious resource that you need to focus on. So make sure you identify those people, and then you basically want to include them in your journey of building a community, and you want to get their input. Like see how you can basically fit your community's vision and where you want to go with your community, how you can fit their vision for how they want to grow inside of that. Dan Martell talks about this a lot. He talks about how it's so important to, when you're working with people, to make sure your vision is big enough so that other people's visions can kind of fit within it. I think that's important when you're trying to build a community. And so basically identifying those super users, I call them community leaders with the Flying Sage, and try to create some arrangement that will allow them to contribute more to the community and allow you to also help them grow in their own capacities as well, as facilitators, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, all that stuff. And so that's another layer that you can then add on to your facilitators, or even just people in your community. You want to find some advisors, so that's always a good layer as well. These are people that you can turn to for support. Sometimes this can be very informal, like you can just have someone that happens to know a lot about this sort of thing that you're trying to do, and you can give them a call once in a while and ask them some questions. And then you might even be inclined to add them as an advisor on your website, and this just kind of adds some more credibility to your brand. And this can be really great if you find certain people that have a lot of status in a certain industry, or like have a lot of knowledge and experience. So that's another thing I'd recommend too. And then finally, as you're moving and growing your team, as you're moving on up in your development of the community, I would start looking towards then hiring someone who's in person, right? Like at this point, our main hire so far is the VA, right? But this is someone who's probably off overseas and not able to help you in person. So assuming you're building a community with in-person events, you really need to focus next on finding an events manager. So this is someone that is going to be basically managing and operating all of the in-person events that are happening in the city that you're building your community in. And so this is going to be ideally you want someone in this position who's a really highly skilled events planner, who's going to be focusing on basically delivering and producing the events that you have. So I say that's the process I'm most familiar with in terms of team building. That's what's worked for me. And it might not necessarily be the exact same roadmap for you, but hopefully that helps. And stay tuned for the next video.